We talk about robotics, the Google Glass, and so on and so forth. So a different set of skills would definitely will be required and will probably emerge with period time. I want to ask a few questions to each of the panelists. And the first question that probably I would like to ask, is with the deployment of the various warehouse management systems, warehouse execution systems, and control systems, automated machineries, why do you feel the need of skilling up the present reduced workforce? Is there any skilling that is actually required? We can start with Imran.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So it's an interesting question you ask, because when I started, I've been now with P&G for about 15 years. And the first job that I had was a warehouse manager in Karachi, running our central distribution center. And that was about a 10,000 pallet pod warehouse, completely manual, and it ran on an Excel sheet. Right? And that's the knowledge in which I grew up in a warehouse management system. I think the key thing we need to look at here is that the warehouse, you can look at it as two lenses. Is it a cost center for you, or is it a value creation driver? The more we start looking at a warehouse as a value creation in terms of the reduction in the supply chain lead time that it can drive, the more efficient your supply chain will be. Now, for a warehouse to do that, it has to be automated. It has to reduce the output that it has in terms of that lead time. So we were hearing a couple of discussions in the morning as well on cross-docking, all of these things. These are different technologies that you have to bring into the warehouse to shorten your lead time. Otherwise, if your supply chain lead time remains long, you're going to have higher inventories and more inefficiency. So for me, the only way you can reduce your warehouse lead time is through this technology automation. So your warehouse management system, your smart solutions, etc. And the people who are going to drive this are the workforces. So the loader that, for example, I interacted with 15 years back was using a piece of paper to tick mark his stock taking. All of a sudden has to start using a handheld device where he's scanning. And the challenge with technology is that there are no shortcuts to it. Because if you take a shortcut to technology, it's going to always bite you back in the long run. So you need to have your workforce skilled to be able to understand the technology and to be able to use that.
Okay, good. George, would you like to throw some light on this first question? What type of skill? I understand that you will have to learn how to adapt these technologies, and it's the workforce that's going to adapt. All the technology stuff that we saw just pre-lunch. Finally, it's not you and I who's holding the handheld scanner. Okay, it's somebody who's holding that. He's going to learn. But typically, what's the skill set that you think is required? What does that actually mean? Apart from the fact that you should know how to press the button, and you should know how to press which buttons. But what's that deep skill that you feel is going to make a big difference in improving the efficiency? I want to.
Just before I answer that question, I'd just like to build upon what Imran mentioned, and I take it from that. If we were to probably close our eyes and think about what would happen in 5 years, we'd probably, all of us or most of us, be integrating probably new team members, called Robert, Jeff, whoever we want. But then this would not probably be a human being, it would probably be a robot. And we've got to and help our teams change in a way that probably this industry has never changed before. Because in some way, probably technology is going to be the biggest driver of change in our industry in the next 5 to 10 years. When I say our industry, it's across the service chain, from I would say the customer backwards rather than from the production forward. And when we look at that, there are probably 3 things that would probably need to be done to help our workforce and our teams manage and embrace this change. The first one is around technology and digitalization. We've got to have our teams embrace that. And to be able to do that, if you think more and more around most of our mature markets in Europe and North America, but also in most of these markets here, the people that we are going to get on board in the next 5 to 10 years, the millennials, they don't want to use paper. They're on mobiles. They're on the apps that are very, very different from what we have today and probably the workforce we have today. So we've got to ensure that they are able to probably embrace this change in terms of technology. You're going to have augmented reality, you're going to have all that in the future that's going to come, and that's going to be one big change. The probably second big change that I noted is our industry is no longer probably going to be in the future siloed. We've got to have people who understand the whole supply chain end to end, even if they are in a warehouse. Because in the end, what will drive our performance and what will drive what our customers would talk about us is what they experience. And what they experience is part of it is in our warehouse, is in our logistics systems. So we've got to have people probably embrace not only understanding how to optimize the warehouse, but probably how they ensure that they can add on probably warehouse management to freight forwarding to all of that, so that they understand the ramifications of what they're doing and optimize the global versus optimizing the local. And third and most importantly, we've got to have teams that embrace change. 60 to 70% of projects worldwide fail on digitalization because change is not embraced. It's not because the technology doesn't exist, it's because the people don't go with them. And if your people don't go with them, you typically move into failure. So it's probably three things. Two of them are around knowledge, so knowledge around technology, knowledge around end-to-end processes. And the third thing is probably to ensure that they drive the change and carry the change rather than be pushed into change, which is probably being pushed into failure.
Good. So having set this, I would say platform of saying that, knowledge, process, and embracing the change, that means welcoming the change, if these three things happen. Do you see that the current worker in the warehouse, the current existing worker in the warehouse, with all the process knowledge that he or she has, and the exposure that they have to the current technologies, do they have the inherent skills, and by virtue of their existing experience, to migrate to the new skill set required? Dr. Muddassir.
I would like to continue from where Kurian left, right, and like Imran said in between. So I had three headings in my mind. I think the change management is already covered. I think Hannibal, as I mentioned, the ADCAR model, awareness, design, knowledge, resourcement. I think when I look into any supply chain problems and any system implementation, I always ask people, you have to see this into four different blocks, or I call it four different levels of supply chain. So what's going to happen to people? What are the key process changes? What changes system will bring, and how are we going to execute? Right? So we need to understand how we're going to execute. To execute, the other three pillars needs to be visible in terms of change. So let's take the people piece. So in a normal warehouse where you don't have just a simple ERP system or a simple WMS system, where you just pick, pack, and ship, produce a pick note, you pick, confirm, and then you create an invoice. If you can ask, with that skill set, if we define a skill matrix, that will look very different if you're trying to deploy a WMS with the voice control or full automation. Like, as soon as so first thing I would recommend to you to people to say, okay, let's define the current standard work. How your current standard work look like in the warehouse. So once we know the current standard work and current skill set, then I ask people the question, based on the new system functionalities, how the process will look like, and how the skill set will look like. So if you compare the two, then you would know that someone will need to be more computer literate, right? Needs to be a bit more tech savvy, should be able to follow SNOP. And here you will see the difference, right? It gets difficult. That you probably want to see half of your workforce cannot be computer savvy. I have an example. When I was in UK, I have some Polish workers working with me, and for them, they used to struggle in terms of writing numbers because they used to make six and nines. So it was very hard work is to get them trained to a level where we want to be. So that's one thing. The second, before we invest any money on the process, I've been part of 3 or 4 different ERP and WMS implementation. There was a lot of huge enthusiasm, less more automation, less deployment system. But as soon as I asked the question, okay, what are the key KPI changes and what are the key process changes, and people struggle to answer that. So before we actually go and deploy and have those expensive kits or software, we need to compare what are key processes, like the key processing.
Okay, so you're basically saying that let's get our processes redefined, and then based on the process, look at the complexities of change, and then based on that, let's decide whether our teams will be able to do it or not. Mr. Rao.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Arif, for inviting me on the panel. Since we're continuing the answers, let me also add on what the gentleman has said. So, automation and supply chain have rather run in parallel. The steam engine, for example, automated freight movement. That was also part of the supply chain. And then we had the forklift, and then we have now automated picking stations, automated packers, etc. So the supply chain automation has been a journey, and it's going to continue in the future. Possibly 5 years down the line, to add to him, we would be having a supply chain conference of this type, a summit, where possibly having robots sitting here, and Arif will be replaced by a robo moderator.
I'm not sure, huh?
Possible. Never say no. This is Dubai.
Not 5 years. That is 10 years, huh?
10 years. So that's how supply chain has been. Now, to answer a specific question, so I'm speaking in terms of my experience. So as a part of Omega Logistics, which is a part of Landmark Group, we have built, developed, conceptualized and commissioned 2 automated warehouses, one in Saudi and one in Dubai. And this is state-of-the-art automation, including AGVs, shuttles, I mean, you name it. It's state-of-the-art, and it can do right from a pallet level to a piece level, and it's e-commerce enabled. And what we have seen in the last 3-4 years is there's always an effect on the worker and the immediate community, because you cannot escape it. The workforce which we have is not competent to handle an automated environment, nothing. So they are trained for WMS level, they can handle RF, etc., the traditional WMS processes, but when you get in an automated environment, it's a huge jump. So you're talking about WCS, WES, PLC systems, conveyor systems. So it's a very radical change in terms of the knowledge and in terms of the skill. And if you want to upskill, you need to start the process much earlier. You know, when commissioning is on, when your service provider is in the location, commissioning the equipment, and you have to train if you need to upgrade. But even after that, there will be a job loss. You know, you have 10 forklift operators, even after upskilling, and if you replace the forklift operators by AGVs, you're not going to require 10 upgraded people. You know, AGVs don't require forklift operators. So you might upgrade a couple of those, but you're still going to have job loss. Now, in terms of specific skills of upgrading, you require system engineers, for example, right? You can manage the system, you can understand the system, you can control the system. You require jam busters, right? Jam busters are people who are on the floor who do the troubleshooting of automated equipment. A conveyor can go down, an AGV can stop suddenly, right? So what's the first level of troubleshooting? That's a jam buster. You require people who understand PLC, so you require PLC engineers, right? So we never had that skill before. Maintenance is a big aspect. So you have in-house maintenance, right? Or you have outsourced maintenance. You require electrical and mechanical engineers, electromechanical engineers who understand the equipment and maintain the equipment. Because an automated environment will work 24/7. So these are the types of skills which is not presently there, and it requires upgradation, it requires upskilling, and we in Omega Logistics follow train the trainer concept. So we have picked up people much before 1 year, you know, even before we start commissioning, put them in the system along with the service provider, train them, and so we have a group of people who are trained who can train the subsequent workforce. Having said that, please also remember there will be a lot of coaching. These will be very, very, these are resources which will be highly valued, and so you have to take care of the package, you have to take care of the career path. So these are the risks which are associated, which I am seeing currently, and we are at an inflection point in terms of warehouse automation. So this would be my overall assessment, and there's a lot to do in terms of warehouse training.
Yeah, I think you brought up very, very valuable points. Yes.
I like what you were adding, and I'd just like to add to that one in terms of sometimes when we do an automation in our supply chain from a warehousing standpoint, it also goes outside the four walls of the warehouse to sometimes our suppliers. Because what happens is that when you've trained a machine to operate in a certain way, they expect that's the drumbeat that it will operate in. So if a pallet is coming in, you can no longer expect an overhang or a tilt, or the way a material road is coming, it's supposed to be to that exact dimension. Whereas sometimes if you're having a manual forklift driver, he can make do with that. So I think as you drive these automations, etc., you also as an industry need to make sure that it's not just within your four walls of the warehouse. If you set up an automation, you might have to go back into your supply chain to change certain parameters as well, and that's an important element to look into.
Right. I just want to also make a point. Sometimes the word automation, tends to bother a lot of people, and we also probably, as human beings, generally very loosely use the word automation. Okay. The fact is, and you're right, that if it is going to be, if a pallet is going to go through a box, or through a frame, then yes, it needs to be. You need to make sure that even your suppliers, comply with overhang limits and so on and so forth. But what my point is here is that most of these developments, which are technological and system driven, are developments which will demand technical skill, and technical skills. And these technical skills are not going to be, so easily available, because these are not going to be, soldering a wire. It's actually, as you said, addressing a PCB fault. Addressing batteries is going to address really complex machinery and complex computing systems. Yeah. So that's one skill set. Yeah. However, it's going to be very tough for you also to manage the gap in skill, because the rudimentary element of warehouse managers or other staffs will continue to remain. And you will still have to probably keep a small mix of people who are very basic in their skills versus a very high-end skill worker. With that, I just go to Mr. Krishna Moorthy. Mr. Krishna Moorthy, I think your co-panelists have made their own respective points, and very important points by each one of them. From your perspective, what's that extra skill? And if I may just give you a clue of what I'm trying to ask, everybody else, is the soft part, the soft skill part. Okay. Temperamental, attitude. These are exceptional skills that lead to accurate process delivery. Would you like to spend some time on it?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to the panel. And I'm sure we have crossed the 23 minutes, so none of them are asleep when I speak.
Yeah, nobody is sleeping. I can see everybody from here.
Yeah. So, actually, in terms of the soft skills, I think we have already covered the technical skills and the soft skills. There are some basic skills which are required. Like, for example, I work for Emirates, I work for Emirates. So earlier we had pure store replenishments, like we only had to replenish the stores. So it was very easy. You just pick a carton, you do the replenishment as per store. So once e-com comes into the picture, you have unit level picking, which becomes very complicated for a person who is only used to a carton level picking. So these are certain things where there is a technical skill involved. But in terms of soft skill, if I may say so, what happened in the earlier scenario was the end customer would never contact the warehouse. Like the warehouse front end is only the retail showroom manager, or the retail, or it's only the internal departments. But with e-com coming into play, you have situations where you are dealing directly with the end customer. Now this needs certain levels of skills, soft skills at the warehouse level also. See, because sometimes it happens that the customer directly comes to the warehouse, the managers are not available, he directly gets in touch with the supervisor or the person who has sent the shipment to them and just starts blasting. So these are certain things which is required. And even taking Mr. Prakash's example of a jam buster. What is a jam buster? A jam buster is a person who at least has a cool mind telling that something has to be done. The technical aspect is later. But the first aspect is that he needs to have that cool mind to ensure that he stops everything and he looks at which critical paths have to be stopped so that it doesn't flow into the supply chain, the error doesn't flow into the supply chain. Now this doesn't need a technical skill if you ask me. If he knows the processes in and out as to how the operations run, he knows what are the impact points. And he has to ensure those impact points are stopped before he gets into the technical aspect of clearing them. So soft skills, if you ask me, will be having having a cool mind, e-com, and earlier, if you see what used to happen is you do your transactions and the reports come out later. But now it's real time. So a person who is doing scanning, a person who is doing this picking, he knows exactly, he needs to have the presence of mind to know that there is a short pick or there is a, or he has done a wrong picking, how does he rectify it? The system prompts him that you have done a wrong picking. Does he have the presence of mind to ensure that this is a wrong product lying in the wrong bin, I need to correct it? If he doesn't do that, the next picking also goes wrong. This again is something which is not technical, it's simple logic where there has been a wrong put away done to a wrong bin, it has to be corrected by him if you observe it. Otherwise, it only comes in the notice when you do a cycle count. When you do a bin count, cycle count, that is when you notice the accuracy. By that time, it may be too late, you might have lost a customer also.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Sorry, I couldn't resist myself. So when you talk about softer skills, in India we have a system called Jugaad, right? That's band-aid technology, and everything can be fixed with Jugaad. This is something which will kill automation, right? So if you ask me one specific skill or an attitude which a person should have in an automated environment, it's discipline, right? Discipline to follow the process, discipline to follow the system, and not do any of this band-aid technology or fix-it technology. Because the minute you interfere with the automation system, something is going to go wrong. Right? In a manual system, your storage is accessible, right? You have kept a carton and there is an urgency, but there is no order, but you need to send the carton to the customer. You can just go pick up the carton and send it, right? And do manual processing later. But in automation, you are talking about a black box, right? You first of all, you cannot even access the carton. It has to come to the system. If something is going on a conveyor and somebody just picks it out, it's lost in the system. Some still think it's there, right? Unless it scans it again somewhere down the line. So, if you ask me, discipline and the attitude to follow the processes and systems, not do any shortcuts, that's a big challenge. And that's again from experience in Omega Logistics and the two DCs we are running. That's the biggest learning for me.
Okay.
People have to change.
Fine. Let's move fast. Dr. Muddassir, you have a point?
Yeah, I think I just want to add, it's not related to the workforce, but how relevant to the organization, right? On the point you made on the product line. So work with the automated warehouse in Germany. And we have to train not just the workforce, but the internal or external stakeholders, right? So give you examples. Automation warehouse was capable of basically automating all the picking for the of the circuit breakers. Small product is designed to do that. The circuit breakers needs to go on a panel board. And panel board picking time is all manual, it was 3 days. Then I used to get a complaint, oh, you can do pick back of circuit breakers in 1 day, but you cannot do it for distribution board because it's going through 2 different warehouse channels, right? So the communication, not just workforce and change, is the expectation to the customer service, your product line managers, and internal people is important.
Okay, so now I think we all understand that it's important, this change management is important, and there are, our workforce needs to double up. And there's a special, it's not a matter of they themselves develop, but there's a specialized skill. Patience is one, discipline is the other, the technical skill upgradation is the third. Now, assuming that there's this plethora of skills that need to be worked upon and people have to be developed around, some of this will be developed with amongst the existing workers, and for some skills you probably will have to get new people, in the system. Are there any training institutes, in the UAE operating that are creating curriculum for such skills? Is industry communicating these nuances? This huge forthcoming dinosaur, and somebody working, because we are talking of thousands of people. We're not talking of 5 people or 50 people or 2,000 people in Denmark. I think we're talking about a whole ecosystem that exists here. Is there anybody looking at it? I can't answer the question, so I'm just asking that, is there anybody looking at it? Are there institutes, forums available which would say, hey guys, this is not only one problem, it's not a PNG problem or a landmark problem, it's an industry problem, and we're going to address this, give your 10,000 people to us on a Saturday and whatever, or is there a curriculum that's talking about these things?
Can I answer this?
Yeah, the question is to all of you.
So, in this current context, in this region, I don't think there's any institute offering very specific curriculum or courses towards automation. We have institutes.
No, I want to correct you, please, gentlemen. See, by creating automation as the premise of this discussion, fine, I think the larger interest of the public will be lost. Okay. I mean, regardless of the fact that you're talking of any level of automation, whether it's extremely automated, semi-automated, or just even mechanized, unless and until there's artificial intelligence in decision making, it's not automation. Unless and until there's a decision making process. We're just conveying things from here to there, and obviously ESRS would be considered as an automated warehouse because there's a decision matrix involved. But what I'm trying to say is that regardless of taking it to the depth of automation, is there any institute that's looking at developing such skills? That's my point.
Yeah, so if you look at the bigger things we talked about, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and other such, the trends of the future, of course, there are some institutes that have started offering very specific courses. But in terms of warehouse automation, like I said, there's nothing in this region as such. Even for
on skill development, there's nothing.
Skill development, I don't think there's anything. I don't know if the panelists can add.
Kurian, you have something to say on this? Yeah.
Just building on to what Prakash said, and listening to the other panelists, is something that's probably interesting that we need to see as an opportunity or a risk. Today, logistics or supply chain is very, very separate from technology. And tomorrow, probably the skills that we need for part of the jobs that we talked about that go into more complexity are probably the same skills that the technology industry is using today. If you talk about AI, if you talk about data analytics, talk about IoT and sensors, you talk about putting it all together, it's the same skills that today many other industries are using. So probably in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have people who probably don't know logistics that well, but can probably add value to what we are doing. So there would probably be one level of people in this ecosystem that we can get from elsewhere. And there's probably another level that's slightly below, that's more on the operations, where you still need to have people who understand the nitty-gritties, but then with very, very different skill sets than today. Because tomorrow you probably may be speaking more to a machine, more to a screen, more to a customer, than actually speaking between yourselves in the warehouse. So that's number one. And number two, I'm a strong believer in this. As technology moves forward in our fields, there will come a limit when we'll be able to do everything by ourselves. We've got to start thinking about partnerships. There's always guys out there, companies out there who are going to be better than you, more specialized than you, and can bring you part of the solution that you can take together and make the whole much, much bigger versus trying to do everything by yourself. Because with all of that stuff we're talking about, things are going to move much, much, much faster than they're doing today in our industry. So it's almost impossible for most of us to be able to keep in sync with that. So we need the guys out in the industry who are experts in that, partner with them for part of it, probably go out and look in the tech industry as a whole for some skill sets, and then probably build some of the others that are lower down on the pyramid by ourselves, because it's either linked to the specificities of our business, or it's linked to the specificities of the region in which we want to operate. And both of those partly are linked to how the company is driven and what the company stands for. So that's probably something that we can discuss further, but that's what I'm gathering from what we're all saying in a nutshell.
Imran, would you like to throw some light on?
So within this region, from a PhD standpoint, our footprint from a warehousing is mostly outsourced, or we use our distributor partners. But I do know, for example, in Europe, we actually have created with 3 industry external companies an academy in our Germany plant and warehouse, where we're trying to try out new technologies, and we're trying to create that as a center of excellence, where we can either test out new things, or once it's a proven technology and we want to train, we create that training material that we, with our external partners, try to deploy to the different sites. So I do feel in general, and speaking from hearing from the panelists as well, is that there is a gap in this region that we need to address more quickly, because that technology change is going to come. If you will continue to look at the warehouse as a cost center versus a value center, you need to start looking at that from a value center standpoint and bringing that capability into that organization.
So let me just take a cue from what you just said, and I'd like to bring this point up. Your starting statement was that as far as this region is concerned, most of it is outsourced. Okay, and then you went to Europe, and you said that in Europe and in Germany we have a proper setup, and that's where our focus is, and etc. I think my big point of concern is that even if it's outsourced, I think the responsibility should remain with the principal to see that the outsourced service provider's team is given the equal amount of importance of training, because at the end of the day, the third-party logistics company is executing standard operating procedures, SOPs, they're delivering, SLAs, they're being measured on KPIs, by the principal companies. And since these technologies are hand-woven between the two organizations, then I think the role of the principal company should continuously remain in uplifting and upgrading the skills of even the third-party logistics companies. Otherwise, what would happen is that I'm very sure that in Germany and in Europe, things will continue to happen well. And this region, which is predominantly serviced through 3PL operations, will continue to remain where it is.
I don't fully agree on that point in terms of, so when we look at outsourcing, right, you always try to look at it from a value standpoint equation, right? If somebody out there can do it better and cheaper than what you are able to do it in-house, then you should always look at outsourcing as an option, right? It just so happens as a unique case for us in P&G, this region, most of our warehousing is outsourced, at least within the Middle East region, because we also work with our distributor partners in the way we go to market to the retail. In Europe, it's a lot more different in terms of how our go-to-market is. So I would not look at the warehousing or the outsourcing in terms of the capability, but more in terms of how a company chooses to execute its go-to-market. And that's a different model which we have for this region versus in Europe. There is no right or wrong in that. It's just the way that we have opted to go.
No, I think you got it wrong. I'm not at all debating the model. Okay, the model is absolutely, would definitely be fine, and this is not being discussed. What we're talking about is skill development of the human resources, the resources. So I'm saying that, just to carry it further, my point is that if we want our outsourced partners' skills also to finally get developed, because all these technologies will finally precipitate down to either your own run warehouses which are run by yourself, or warehouses which are run by outsourced service provider. You will find all these artificial intelligence technology and stuff, all this stuff will finally percolate down there. The point is that we're talking about skill management and skill upgradation. If the principals are having a syllabus or have created some sort of an activity which they continuously do in warehouses which are owned, run and fulfilled by themselves, then the same curriculum and the same syllabus should percolate down the line to the third-party logistics service provider, so that you have semblance, equilibrium and balance in all the services that finally they are delivering a service.
So to answer that is, we do it, but probably not to that large extent that we would have in Europe or North America. We do partner with our existing distributors over here or suppliers, where we do kind of build their capability as well, as and where required, where we see that value. Okay, but not probably to that large extent that we've seen in other regions.
Yeah.
No, I just want to add on the first one as well. In my experience, I think it depends on the contract or tender agreement you have with the 3PL. So who is the subject matter expert here? Is it the third party providers or it is us? Because when I was part of the project, we actually outsourced everything to DHL with the premise they are the subject matter expert. They know how to run warehouse, they know better than us. So people belongs to them, warehouse belongs to them. So they are providing a service. Just for the contract, we have the agreement that they have to do some continuous improvement exercise and guidelines to provide better productivity and some cost out. But in terms of training and development, we assume, based again on the contract, they are the subject matter expert and they know better than us in terms of improving this process. So that was nice scenario, I think.
Maybe I continue to have a little different
I just want to add one small point, a different take on this. So we are third-party logistics service providers, Omega, but we have outsourced contract labor, right? So since we're talking about workforce, I just want to add, so we take a lot of outsourced contract labor, and you'll be surprised to know some of these people are working as my jam busters and working on automation. So we have not distinguished between our internal labor and external labor. So if we find someone good from the outsourced contract labor, we provide the same training and develop the skills, because we look at the person and his attitude, his skill set as a whole, and they are doing pretty well. So I just want to give another angle.
Well, that's a winning approach. That's a very well stated winning approach. Yeah. Okay. So we are. It's exactly 3 p.m. and I'll try to see that we less on time. Is there any question that you guys want to ask? Anyone of us want to ask on the skilling side, or the point that I just raised with respect to? I can see a lot of third-party contract logistics companies sitting here. Would you like to ask any questions with regards to how skilling should be treated in this evolving and ever-changing environment? Or, yes, Imran.
Just a comment in terms of your BPL and soft skills process. Being a 3PL operator, I manage 3PL operation. The importance of integrating with your operator is important if you're managing them. You can't take them in and say, okay, you're the expert, and I'm taking my hands off the operation. So you have to manage the service level agreements and the contract. And you also need to observe what is happening and recommend training or upgrades or changes where you see there is an opportunity, even if they haven't noticed it. It's a symbiosis of a relationship. It's not a them and us process. So if you're going to put in a symbiotic relationship, this can be grown. As your example was when you develop your 3PL team, that's excellent because that's the best process that you need to do. And from a soft skills perspective, if you don't understand your people that you're trying to develop, you're going to end up with a shortfall. So the first thing you need to do if you're trying to convert people onto new technologies is you actually need to do an assessment on them to determine their skill set level. And from there you select those who are the best for it and you train in their own language. We tend to do a lot of our training and development communication in English because that's the English language, and a lot gets lost. So if you're going to do development, do the training in English, but make sure that there is someone who can translate it into Urdu or Hindi or Malayan or whatever language, Arabic, whatever language you require. Make sure that there's someone who can actually communicate it. And by doing that, you bridge the gap.
Yeah, please.
On your first point, I agree with you. At least within P&G, every time I've seen that we've used a third-party logistics company and we've kept a distance to say let them manage it, that operation in the mid to long term has always failed. Because we know our business from a customer expectation standpoint, and the third party knows it from an operational excellence standpoint. And when you marry those two together, is when you take it to the next level in terms of delivering that value creation from a supply chain. So I fully agree with you. We've always made sure that whenever we do outsource something, it requires a certain governance from our standpoint to make sure that we continue building so that that 1 + 1 actually goes to a much bigger value than the simple addition.
Exactly, that's the point I was trying to say. We need to integrate this, and I think you clarified that point. Well, I think we've had a very interesting discussion, and the one thing that's probably come out is that yes, there are very, very different, intriguing skill sets that probably now need to be developed, and moving forward with the type of technologies, not only technology but the type of processes and the speed that needs to get created in warehouses with the transaction volumes becoming large, sizes becoming small. There's a different animal that will be required, to execute better service levels and perform in terms of the key performance indicators. And this is something which will have to be comprehensively addressed, between service providers and service availers or principal companies per se, and even technology service providers. I'm sure these jam busters that you're talking about are not trained by principal companies, but are trained by the technology companies themselves. That this is what you need to do. They're on-road vehicle off-road engineers, sitting out there and waiting for a vehicle to get off-road, and how do we put that plan into place? And I'm sure there's a lot of plan B and plan C also put in place in such huge, humongous, complex warehouse environments. So I think the takeaway from here is that you should, amongst so many other discussions that need to happen between principals and service providers, this should become a very important part of the review discussion, as to what do we need to do in order to improve skills, and how can we jointly work towards improving skills. The second thing that I personally feel is that looking at the overall huge ecosystem that exists out here, there should be probably some note that needs to go. I think we have an NFL representation here, so something needs to be done from the government point of view, to be able to look at it from one single eye, and how probably we can have training being done specifically with these type of skills that are the new emerging skills that need to be brought up. That's, I think, what's the summation and the sum and substance of the discussions. Fine. If you don't have any further questions, I'll.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions. Just two comments, very quickly.
Yeah.
So we work with some of the Japanese companies in India, and we work with Maruti Suzuki, and we do a lot of work with automotive. So there I find, sir, that Japanese companies take a long time to sign on, let's say, a new service provider. But once they are on, they are more committed to training and development than some of our own people. And that's a great learning, and it's been a great journey for us to partner with Maruti Suzuki. And I think large companies like yourselves, if you invest that knowledge which you have gained regarding your business, and translate that to the service provider, you will see huge amount of improvement in their deliverables. Okay, so that's part one. And part two, talking about the new technologies and the requirement for upgrading skills, learning skills. There's a free portal which is actually, it's called edx.org, and it is run by Harvard Business School, MIT, and many of these top MSU, they have this portal, and they provide free supply chain courses. So it's absolutely free. Anybody interested in upgrading their skills, it's even for senior managers and general managers. It's completely free. They give you the course requirements. The only if you want a certificate, then they charge you something like $50 or $100. But I think that we all stakeholders in the supply chain environment need to empower our people to do better and operate this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. With this, we end the session. Thank you very much. I request you to kindly just be on stage, please. Small moment. Yeah. Yes, yourself. The question coming.